practiced over 7 decades. Now that sounds a little bit much, okay? But let me rephrase that. He practiced in 7 decades. So he could have actually practiced for 61 years and spanned in 7, okay? So we're not going to give him too much credit here. But what I want to show you is his research. And his research is phenomenal to show you another whole facet to dealing with diabetes. And his supposition was when you eat is more important than what you eat. Now, we'll go over his data. I happen to believe both are important. But I want to show you the data to realize the when part of it that we usually put down as compared to just eating perfectly. Let me give you a point. I could eat an excellent meal at the wrong time and still have glucose influences that wouldn't be healthy for my body. So timing is critical. Susan brought that up a little bit. Eating early in the morning always sets your metabolic rate for the whole day. That's why your mother said what? Eat your breakfast. You set your metabolic rate for the whole day by what you eat for breakfast. By skipping breakfast, you basically slow your metabolic rate for the whole rest of the day. And if you work in industrial medicine like I do now and go out and trying to get people not to hurt themselves on the job, which, by the way, the biggest thing is still back injury, breakfast skippers always have more accidents on the job. Even if you give them a 10 o'clock, what we call a coffee break, snack break, whatever you want to call it, even if we give them a 10 o'clock break, their accident rate doesn't go down until noon when they get another meal. So breakfast skippers not only have more disease, they are more prone to accidents at work, they cost their employer more money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How did I get there? Dr. Cap, all patient followed the directions lost. Okay, number 1, he had 3 basic rules. Yeah, good lead in. You have to eat breakfast. The next basic rule is you can snack and you can eat whatever you want to. And you go, man, this is terrible for a diabetic conference. Okay. And the third rule is you can't eat anything after 1 o'clock. I see I got your attention. But look at the results. Those who ate only breakfast averaged 10 pounds of weight loss a month. Well, I guess so. 1 meal a day probably worked for all of us. Number 2, those who ate breakfast, lunch, and snacked averaged 5 to 6 pounds a month. Well, after a year of that, most of us would be looking either emaciated or pretty good, depending on us. Those who lost from 20 to 30 pounds showed an increase in hemoglobin level. Why do we bring that one up? What do most people believe? I'm starving you. These poor anemic people are going to just dry up and blow away and pass out on me. Amazing. These people eat less, lose weight, and their hemoglobin goes up. Does that tell you anything? Blood sugar levels of diabetic patients who lost 30 pounds. So the group up here would have got there in 3 months. The second group that had lunch, breakfast, snacks would have gotten there in 6 months. But I want you to read the rest of this. 30 pounds or more were normalized. If you have a normalized blood sugar, are you a diabetic? That's what I want you to start thinking about. I don't have to be this way. This really isn't me. I'm sick and tired of this name. This is one time you get to change your name. You're not the disease. You are not diabetic. You're people, okay? And people don't need to be disease. And we've just accepted it. We've accepted it so bad that now we think that pharmaceuticals make you healthy. I mean, you guys watched television when you were a kid. What about Fat Albert? Fat Albert used to sing the song, "Drugs are for dummies." You remember that? Well, you missed some good television. Fat Albert was trying to get street kids off street drugs, I know. But even back then, his song was "Drugs are for dummies," and he'd sing this catchy tune about why you shouldn't use drugs. I see some of you smiling. I'm not the only one that watched that cartoon, hopefully. Or maybe I'm telling how old I am. blood sugar levels of diabetic patients who lost 30 or more pounds were normalized. That means that we had a whole population in his practice that went from being diabetic, and within 3 to 6 months, he could mark that out on their chart. Down here at the bottom, his hypothyroid patients showed a reduction in their thyroid maintenance requirements. They needed less Synthroid or levothyroxine or whatever they're taking, which is one of the most popular drugs in America. America has a thyroid drug, a blood pressure drug, and an antidepressant drug. You can guarantee change the labels from year to year. Those are the three biggies. You want to know what the most popular drug in the whole world is for the world population? Any guesses? Lipitor. Somehow we've convinced people that you can take a drug to lower your cholesterol and that you're going to make you healthy. The problem is, all that Lipitor that all these people are taking is not causing them to live one day longer, because it doesn't give people and take away their heart attack like they want you to believe. So what are you paying $200 a month if you're not living longer for it? Maybe you want to go to a fancy hotel or save up for going to Atlanta and do that 5-day fast. Relative risk for diabetes. Weight and risk go hand to hand. We've said it with the height to waist circumference. We've said it with the circumference around the middle, however you want to say it. A football player who weighs 275 pounds has a BMI that's way too high. But first of all, I'm not going to tell him he's overweight, because he's really not. He's over muscle. He's not over fat. What I'm concerned about is that we have too much what we call table muscles. You know, that's a nice way of saying adipose tissue. BMI, body mass index, the lower the body mass index, you basically don't find any diabetes. And as the body index goes up, 25 is where they draw the line. 25 or less we consider us good. 30 is the next line. They call us overweight. And then they call us obese. And then they get real nasty and use all kinds of terrible words. Let me go, you can see this one better. Normal, 19, all the way up to 25 or 24.9. So let me just use myself for an example. I'm about 5'10", come across here to my weight, somewhere between here. So I'm between 21 or 22 BMI, body mass index. Now I'm going to show you what I could weigh, and they'd still tell me I was good. They tell me that I could weigh up to about 174 pounds. I'm going to tell you something. If I walk in here at 174 pounds, I hope that you all stand up and walk out. Now, why do I say it that way? Because I happen to believe that if you're in the health field, you should be healthy. I don't go to doctors to lose weight if they weigh 300 pounds. And if you do, I would question you, okay? It's like the old thing. You don't go to your thoracic surgeon who smokes, who's going to take your lung out, okay? It's just not making sense. And I feel that your career is a calling as well as a responsibility. So that's why I want to go to the healthiest doctor you can get your hands on. I think they may have something better to say. Artificial sweeteners, the big answer to diabetics. Well, you can have this because it won't cause an insulin response. Well, that's kind of a lie. Because artificial sweeteners truly give you a neurological sensation on your tongue. It tastes sweet, and there's no sugar there. Splenda, NutraSweet, saccharin, other cyclamates, etc., etc. And by the way, the old rat studies on saccharin, they must have literally soaked the rats in the saccharin solution and gave them cancer. So some of those studies were a bit overdone. It'd be like you taking, I don't know, how many pounds of saccharin a day. So some of those early studies, I will admit, weren't that valid. But that doesn't diminish the impact of what I'm going to tell you. When you take in an artificial sweetener and it tastes sweet on your tongue, what do you think the brain does with that information? It communicates to your pancreas, and it tells your pancreas to do what? You've got sweet, you've got sugar coming, prepare for digestion. Do you know how fast sugar gets into your bloodstream? Well, what do you give a diabetic that's laying there on the floor because they took too much insulin? You almost pry their mouth open and give them what? Orange juice? Or if you have a large sugar pill, sometimes they even carry those in their purse because if they overdo the insulin, etc. That's how fast it goes in. So the body has got a built-in mechanism to try to respond to the sugar load by increasing your insulin prior to that time. And it goes, we got a problem here. They just told me to put out more insulin and nothing's coming down. And if you want to make it worse, chew gum with artificial sweeteners. Not only am I chewing, it's giving me a sugar sense, and it never comes down. I mean, you can't fool Mother Nature. I mean, you can't keep doing this. And so out comes all the insulin, your blood sugar drops, and what do? I got to eat. I need something. I got to eat. So guess what? All these low-calorie, no-calorie foods have added to the obesity in our country. Because when you drop the blood sugar, you want to eat more. It's a neurological thing. We haven't talked about the nerve problems and all the other thing. And by the way, since the FDA approved it, it means it's okay. I'm sorry, that was supposed to be tongue-in-cheek, okay? Remember, never mix health and politics. You will always come up with a bad combination. That's why I think my country should get out of health care. And I already said already, I would like them out of education too. Now you're hearing my pet peeves. Rats on artificial sweeteners tended to overeat 3 times as much. So in a rat cage, I put 1 bottle of sugar water, white sugar in water, and stuck that in the cage and said, suck on that one, okay? Took my other set of rats and put in my NutraSweet in the water and put that in the cage. The rats that had sugar water, which by the way, don't do this experiment. I'm dealing with diabetes here. They had sugar water. We compared it with artificial, and the artificial sweetened rats ate 3 times as much food. Why? Because the artificial sweeteners had a more dynamic effect on the pancreas response to drop that blood sugar level and bring the insulin than even sugar water. I mean, you can't get, now if we had said, well, let's put molasses in this one or give them something at least sweet with a little bit of mineral. No, this is white table sugar. Number of Americans consuming sugar-free products, 70 million in 1987, 160 million in 2000, and believe me, it hasn't slowed down. There may be 10 or 20% of our population that doesn't get any artificial sweeteners. 80% of America would be approximately 240 million people consume these in one form or the other and at various quantities. I mean, remember when NutraSweet came out in boxes about this big, sitting on the shelf, blue and pink and all this stuff, okay? Did you watch the Splenda rollout? You should have seen it. You almost needed a suitcase to go shopping. I mean, they came out, they had America already hooked. And all they had to say is, this is better. And you went home with your case for the week or the case for the month. I don't know what the next rollout is, but you might need to take your pickup truck. No. Aspartame, NutraSweet, is 2 proteins that taste sweet on the tongue that have nothing to do with sugar. No sugar there at all. We have figured out, due to the chemistry of the tongue, what stimulates the tongue response to make you think sweet. And so we can use other chemicals, not in sugar, to give you that brain response. Users have experienced fibromyalgia, spasms, shooting pains, numbness, cramps, vertigo, headaches, tinnitus, joint pain, anxiety attack, blurred speech, blurred vision, memory loss. And of course, you always hear about the extreme, The person goes to the neurologist, they take them all off all artificial sweeteners, and they're a new person in 3 days. Well, I like those kind of patients too. The problem is that most people actually tolerate this stuff well enough for them to use it over and over again. That's the real problem. If they all got this, then it'd be a problem. But why would the department that's supposed to protect your health recommend this to you. I'll let you decide that one. Splenda, research reveals numbness in the legs of rat. And by the way, I'm not sharing you anything that the FDA didn't have on their table with reports when they passed this. Numbness in the legs of rats. Well, I'm not a rat, but I've checked that one out. Enlarged livers, spleens, kidneys, male infertility, and gastrointestinal problems during pregnancy, and greater caloric intake. Greater caloric intake. The food that's supposed to make you eat less calories, because it's a free food, is the very food that makes you do the opposite. Fiber. Fiber is your friend, not your enemy. The more fiber in your diet, the less you get glucose in your bloodstream. It's kind of like a buffer. The higher the fiber, the longer it takes to digest, the longer it takes to process, and so the glucose, sugar, seeps into your bloodstream a lot slower, enough for the pancreas to keep up. So what do we find out? Diseases associated with low-fiber diet, obviously constipation. The size of the stool is inversely proportionate to the size of the hospital. Did you get that? Plain English. Big hospitals, small stools. No hospitals, I'll let you come to the conclusion. My point is that we have continued to take out, either by food choice or by actually don't want it in, fiber out of your diet more and more and more and more. And by the way, there's no fiber in the animal kingdom. You see, the cow eats the grass and passes the fiber. What you get isn't fiber. So what you need to do is figure out how to eat like the cow. By the way, you and I don't have the enzymes to digest grass, so don't go there, but broccoli is starting to look pretty good. Diverticular disease, 50% of Americans over age 50 have a blown out bowel. That's what a diverticuli is. It's where you've worked so hard to try to pass no stool that the muscle, the interior of the intestinal tract, the colon, actually goes out through the muscle layer. When it's diverticulitis, obviously the itis means you got inflammation. Hiatus hernia. The stomach is being pushed above the diaphragm muscle. Once again, about 50% of adults over age 50 have this one. Varicose veins, hemorrhoids, bowel cancer, colon polyps, heart disease, strokes, diabetes mellitus, the official name for what we're talking about, and gallbladder disease. I think I need some fiber. So I'm going to go out and buy a box of All Brand. No, just start eating right. Did you know that beans are the highest fiber naturally? They're the highest fiber food. Not celery, not a peach, not all your fruits, and not all your other vegetables. Those are not really that high of fiber. Your beans and your grains, whole grains, are your highest fiber foods. So please take those in. And before you think that I'm trying to starve you and that your protein level will go down, I want to assure you that even though that vegetables and fruit and grains have less protein than eating a steak, let me show you what happens to the kidney. So low protein diet arrests kidney failure. Remember we said before that 40% of kidney diseases was due to being diabetic, so we're not out of context here. Kidney filtering ability, 110 on the typical American diet. We've got a person that their filtering ability is down below 50. Now, if you've gotten your lab work back, they tell you they want you at 60 or better. So we've got a person at 50 here. We changed their diet. Over 1 year, you go, it's still at 50. You go, well, I didn't do anything. No, you forgot something really important. This person's graph was running into the ground. You basically just saved the person's kidneys. That's what you just did, or they might be yours. Low protein diet increases blood protein. Typical mistake so many nutritionists make. You come in, your blood albumin, your protein level in your blood is low. So what do? Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? Give them more protein. Of course, that's any dummy would know that. Well, guess what you do? If you want to damage the kidney, give them more protein. So we put them on a low-protein diet, and we watched the serum albumin go up from 3.4 to about 4.0 on 1 year. Oh, wait a minute. How? Whoa, what's going on now? I'm treating a man right now with severe ascites. Ladies, if you thought you looked big when you were pregnant, you ain't seen nothing. And this is a man, by the way. Guess what I've got him on? A low-protein diet. I am trying to save his liver so that it will start producing enough albumin again to plug the holes in his vascular tree so he stops leaking. It's the only thing that's going to save this man's life. And yes, I'm not being mean. I have offered him to go in and get the fluid drawn off and help him out. And he goes, I said, but if you're okay, and you can eat your meal, and when your stomach fills up, you don't feel like you're just bloated, then we're good. Because as this fluid continues to go down, it'll let me know how fast the liver is healing, and it'll save you from getting so much lab work coming out of your arm. And he goes, I'm good with that. I saw him last week. I checked his abdomen. It's been three or 4 weeks now. I can actually move his belly all around. It's not tight. It's not taut. He has dropped approximately from 139 pounds to 119 pounds, and that was mostly water. I was getting concerned about his kidneys, so now I've got him drinking over 100 ounces of water a day, so I'm not just dehydrating a person, okay? So, low-protein diet reduces urine protein. So when I see protein in the urine, because the diabetes has damaged a person's kidneys, you're tempted to do what? Same thing all over again. Give them more protein. But here, we call this microalbumin or microprotein because a dipstick at a low level, you can do a urinary dipstick at the doctor's office, pulls it out, and you won't find anything. But if you're diabetic, you should get a microalbumin done to see what the kidneys are doing. This person was at 2,000. There's no doubt. 2,000 milligrams is 2 grams of protein. That's a significant amount. Within 1 year, it dropped to 100. Well, 100 is still 5 times the normal level. We would like to be around 20. I wish I could line up people across the stage here and allow you to see what is happening to patients, because I have one man who would tell you the story better than this chart can, because he experienced the 2,000 down to 12. Low protein reduces blood pressure in diabetics. Are you getting tired of my slides yet? I'm not just making this story up. Systolic blood pressure dropped. Diastolic, the lower number, dropped on a low-protein diet. We have been sold a bill of goods that is still hard to break in our minds. Protein is good. The more protein, the healthier you are, and we have to have more protein, and animals and eggs are the best protein. Well, every one of those statements I just said are false. And I prove it every day if you'll allow me, and you can prove it to yourself. You don't need to eat eggs. Those are for baby chickens, okay? Well, I guess if you eat 1 egg, you eat the whole chicken. That's pretty good, you know. It's very efficient. Animal protein was never made for humans. We're not made for this kind of protein. In fact, we can even get too much protein on a vegetarian diet without all the veggie meat we used to get. My brother was kind of funny. He had a good sense of humor. He used to call it, you're eating church meat. Well, what he was really telling me is because I went to a parochial school and it was by my denomination and they fed me this fake meat, he would call it church meat. So I'll let you can figure out what you want to call it, but when they start having wham instead of ham, please get worried about it, okay? Because when you find the wog they got it from, we're all going to be in trouble. American versus Chinese. You know, we have these basic food groups. How many of you remember the basic food groups in America? Remember meat was one of the food groups? Remember dairy was one of the... Wait, half of my diet, I've got a problem here. And then they throw in legumes and vegetables or grains in combination. Look at this. Milk, meat, fruits and vegetables, and grains, the American Basic Four. Well, half that diet gives us major disease. The other half of the diet is so refined, we haven't got a chance. Chinese Basic Four, green leafy vegetables, soybean products, sweet potatoes, and cereal grains. You go, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like 4, that sounds like about 1. Because I'm going to put all these together, and cereals, well, I got some legumes here. Let's see how it works out. On the Chinese Basic Four groups, if they are going to eat what they normally would, green leafy vegetables, they're eating about 500 grams a day, 454 grams per pound. So about a pound of green leafies a day, they're going to get 5 grams of protein. See, I told you, Doc, you can't get enough protein from eating greens. Well, that's all you eat. Might be difficult. Soy products, soybean products, they eat about 60 grams, about 2 ounces, about 30 grams per ounce. They get 18 grams of protein there. Their sweet potatoes eat almost a pound, got 8. And their cereal grains, their rice, they're getting about 400 grams, a little bit less than a pound for 40 grams. So when you look at that chart, have you learned anything? Where do you get most of your protein if you're a vegetarian? Not from peanut butter, not from nuts, which they're not getting here, but it still applies. You get most of your protein as a vegetarian from your grains. And by the way, if any of you feel the necessity, or because you don't have the enzymes and you're off gluten, there's still a lot of other good grains to get at there. And right now we're in a gluten where the pendulum has swung way too far, and it will swing back. But wheat is not a bad grain. It probably has been over-refined and overused as a single grain in most of our diets, and some people do have problems. But I will tell you a secret. If you go off all gluten, guess what you give up? You give up your donuts, give up your pie, you give up your cake, you give up your cookies. You do that anyway, and guess what? You're probably going to feel a lot better whether it had gluten, no gluten, some gluten, or who's gluten. Now, if you have an enzyme deficiency or if you have an allergy to wheat, please don't use it. It's just that we have pushed it beyond its expected results. So what have I got here? And how big are the Chinese anyway? You know, they're about 8 feet tall and they all weigh about 400 pounds. So they need more protein, don't you think? No, they're about this tall and weigh half as much. Well, not quite. These aren't big people in general. But their protein on their diet is 71 grams a day. Guess what your government recommends for you right now? If you're a man, we recommend 56 grams of protein a day. If you're a lady, we recommend 44 grams. This is your government, not me. And I think that's excessive. But that's the government because they want to make sure that if you get an injury, if you have a burn, or you break a bone, or you're growing, or whatever, you may need a little more protein. These poor Chinese are way over protein. But even in the China Health Study done by Dr. Campbell, he proved something significant, that if you're going to overdo your protein and you do it from a vegetable source, you have a whole lot less problems than doing it from an animal source. So these people can actually get away and have a whole lot less disease than we do, including diabetes. Okay, I couldn't resist. It's going to sound like snake oil, but hang in there with me. Benefits include the treatment of cancer, diabetes, heart disease, headache, excessive weight, skin disorders, eczema, jaundice, scurvy, rheumatism, arthritis, gout, eye disorders, constipation. Hey, look at this one. Eat enough cabbage? Don't have Alzheimer's. I've told you this story before, but maybe some of you are new here. I grew up as a vegetarian kid. And so when you go to eat at your friend's house, you're not sure what to eat or what not to eat. It was a little bit confusing for me because when I ate at home, and Mom put a cutlet on the plate, you eat the whole thing. You don't do that with chicken, folks. Otherwise, you'll be into the bone and cartilage and knuckles and something before you get done with this deal. So I was a vegetarian kid that didn't know how to eat meat. So I compromised. They used to call me a cabbage head, and I should have said thank you. I was too belligerent because I turned around and called them a porky. So that's how we got along back then. And we were both socially incorrect, And so they were Porkies, and I was a Cabbage Head, and we still went out and played soccer and baseball and had a good time and rode our bicycles. We just were on a little bit different menu. My children grew up in a much more vegetarian-friendly world. I grew up when I was weird. So you get used to being weird and it doesn't bother you after a while, right? People, you go to these vegan seminars and you start talking, and they raise their hand and go, I've been vegan for a whole month. And I feel like not saying it, but I say, congratulations, that's really awesome. Well, how long have you been vegan? I'm going, let's see, I'm going on 67 here. So, you must realize that I'm very biased, okay? So I try to present data that takes me out of my bias zone. But I was raised a vegetarian kid. Yes, I was raised on a small farm. I know how to eat eggs. I know how to drink cow's milk and even goat's milk, if you can get that one in. And you start going through the list. But my mom called me the soy baby. So whenever I came along, I guess Worthington or Loma Linda had put out Soygen by then. But guess what? I'm the only kid in my family that still has his tonsils. But I thought I was getting ripped off because when both my brothers had their tonsils taken out, they got to eat ice cream when they came home. Now, don't ask me how you give a kid ice cream after they get their tonsils out, except they reported that that would make your throat feel better. Effects of food processing. I'm showing you this because of what it does to the blood sugar level. The more fiber you take out of a food, the more it's going to affect your blood sugar. We're looking at an apple here. Apples are healthy. A whole apple, if you eat an apple, blood sugar, let's say we're on 70, the blood sugar will go up, come down, and then level out. If you eat applesauce, usually you peel the apple, don't always have to, you take out the core. Applesauce, a little different. It went up about almost as high, and then it dropped down lower and stayed lower. By the way, this is not a diabetic chart. This is a person who isn't diabetic. Then if you drink apple juice from that one apple, the sugar goes up as high and then drops and stays down. So what have you learned? Sugar in the juice was no more than the sugar in the applesauce was no more than the sugar in the fresh apple. These are all one apple equivalent. But look what happened to the bloodstream. By taking all the fiber out, I have not only raised the blood sugar, no higher than the regular apple, but I've dropped it down and made you feel miserable for the next 2 or 3 hours, which does what? Almost like the artificial sweeteners. When your sugar drops that low, what are you tempted to do? Give me another glass of juice. Give me something else to eat. So the more by the way, I'm not against juice. I just want to show you what the effect is. But if you were only drinking, eating one apple equivalent applesauce, or drinking apple juice from one apple, this is what you would get. So this is research trying to show the point that the more refined, the more problem you're going to have with your blood sugar. Blood sugar for type 1 diabetics, we haven't touched on a little bit, but this is the ones that are insulin dependent. We have if we control the blood sugar well, we have a reduction in retinopathy, the retina of your eye, 54% reduction in kidney disease, a 60% reduction in peripheral neuropathy, and a 35% decrease in cardiovascular risk. Exercise and diabetes, you don't lose your weight by exercise. I hear it all the time. Wait till I get my bicycle, or when I join the gym, or how many stationary bicycles do you think are used? I don't have that data for you. But I can almost guarantee you that it's easier for me to take $125 out of my pocket, I don't have to go to Amazon, and order a bicycle and have it shipped in. And what do I expect to happen to me? The more I look at the bicycle, I just get skinnier and skinnier. And it's sitting right next to my bed, and when I sleep, it gives me this vibration, and all those vibrations take the pounds right off. That's about as logical as buying a stationary bicycle. Okay, some of you are bicycle riders. I am too. I enjoy my bike. But the point is that so many times we buy a gym membership, we buy a bicycle, we buy a rowing machine, and we expect it to do something that we haven't figured out to do up here. Exercise is up here, folks. I dare you. Go to a gymnasium. Take your camera. Don't get hit, okay? Take pictures of everybody coming into the gym. Go back 1 year later. Take the same picture of everybody coming in the gym. What will you find out? They're healthier or fatter. Exercise is important, but exercise is not the key to controlling diabetes. It's only one small portion. The way you control diabetes is intermittent fasting. The way you control diabetes is what I put between these lips. That has much more impact on all disease than anything else. And if it didn't, and all this aerobics started by Kenneth Cooper, that's had more people wearing out millions of dollars worth of fancy tennis shoes, has only helped to cover up America's disease. I used to do a fair amount of running. And guess who sponsored the running events? I didn't buy, but there were some beer companies that sponsored the event. And they would tell you that if you want to complete the marathon, you won't hit the wall as quick as if you drink beer first. And I'm not sure if it numbed up your brain or if you could run faster. I'm not sure it helped your coordination, okay? Then I had a Dannon yogurt was a sponsor to one of the races I was in. And you go do your research and go, yeah, Dannon yogurt, ladies who eat Dannon yogurt on a regular basis, they have 40% more ovarian cancer, so thanks a lot. So you start going through the data and you go, this doesn't make sense. I've never run a race where they offered me Marlboros, though. Okay, I think we got that one down. Because the guy who wins the race is probably not a smoker. So what do we have? Exercise definitely decreases the risk of diabetes. Why is that? A person who exercises probably eats healthier, probably eats less, and probably burns some fuel. So this is not a put down on exercise. We're saying that you can't exercise yourself out of being diabetic. You have to do more than that. Equivalence, walking equivalence. Some of you like to jog or bike or swim or whatever. The equivalent is basically equivalent to walking a mile. The reason I want you to walk a mile is for your brain. Circulation to the brain. People who walk have the least amount of dementia. I always thought the ones that played bingo or that played chess or that worked out on a computer, or did something to stress the mind, or did crossword, or Sudoku, or you go through your own list, okay? No. The people who have the least amount of dementia are the people who get better brain circulation. So if you want to hit a big winner, walk for your brain. So jogging a mile or walking a mile, and you go, that's not fair. I ran. How can they do that to me? Well, you're moving this much body that far, and that's what counts, whether you walk a mile or whether you jog a mile. Hopefully you're jogging quick enough to get there a little bit sooner, okay? Some people come in and they go, well, I run. I go, well, how fast do you run a mile? They go, oh, I run a mile in 11 minutes. I'm going, 11 minutes? Okay. You see, if you walk fast, like those speed walkers, you know, those guys or ladies, they look like they're trying to get out of their own skin or something, you know, they're almost having a fit and can't get away from it, you know. They can almost walk that fast. See, the definition of running is 1 foot is not touching the ground all the time. The definition of walking is 1 foot is always touching the ground before the next one comes off. So you have to have that glide effect, at least to be in the jogging mode. And some people almost miss that gliding effect. So when I say running, we're talking about a little better than 11-minute miles. Swimming, 10 minutes of swimming. Rowing machine, 12. Stationary bike, 12. Wait a minute. It takes me 12 minutes to be the equivalent of walking 1 mile. I might as well go out for my walk. Aerobics, 20 minutes. Active, tennis. Well, it depends who you play with. If you want to get a workout, you have to always play with someone better than you. So they can run you around the handball court or the racquetball court or the tennis court. Seventh-day Adventist men from the health study, meat and diabetes, the use of meat less than once per day per week, less than 1 day per week, they set their risk ratio equal to 1. The men who ate meat 6 or more, so basically daily, their risk was almost 4 times the diabetic. Now, does meat cause diabetes? That's not what this slide says. It says that this dietary regime plus this equals this over here. But this is epidemiology. We are just telling you that these people in this population have a lot higher risk of diabetes. My personal opinion, yes, eating meat sets you up a lot more likely to be diabetic. Fiber. We just touched on fiber. I'm going to show you some fiber foods, and you will see that's the quantity is over here, the particular food item, soluble and insoluble. What you want for a diabetic is some of both, but you primarily want soluble fiber. Oatmeal, you overcook your oatmeal and it looks like you made Elmer's glue. That is the soluble fiber. Soluble fiber binds better with your bile acids, that's your cholesterol coming up, you get rid of your cholesterol out through the bowel. It binds better, and it doesn't allow you to absorb your cholesterol, your cholesterol, but your sugar as well. The insoluble ones, they don't go into solution. They go in like they came out. What can I say? Wheat bran is insoluble. It basically doesn't be affected if you put it in water or don't put it in water. It goes in the same, it comes out the same way it goes in. And people were all upset a few years back when they found out that their favorite bread had sawdust in it. Well, I don't want to pay the price for my bread if you're going to put sawdust in it, but sawdust is just cellulose. Sawdust is a carbohydrate. Sawdust is cellulose. Same thing as if you put wheat bran in there. In fact, if you do much work on the home and you got out your chainsaw and you're going through a good oak log and you see what's coming out of that log at your feet, it sure looks like that bag of bran you just bought. You might as well just scoop it up and take it to the wife and say, I think I saved us a few bucks. No. I'm glad my wife is not here. She might get me on that one. I haven't tried that. 10 dried figs. Well, most of us don't eat 10 figs at a time. If you did, you'd have 7.5 grams. By the way, what grams should you get? We set goals. Your grams of fiber should at least be 30 a day, and you should work your goal up to 60. Now, this is a little bit of reverse psychology, because if you're trying to get 60 grams of fiber in a day, you can't spend much time on eating cheese and cottage cheese and milk and meat and all that, because they get 0. So I automatically push you to this side of the fence, which I'm trying to do as gently as, I don't know about gently, as quick as possible. So dried figs, 7.5. Look at the insoluble, 9.9. Why do you think figs have so much insoluble fiber? Have you opened a fig up lately? It's full of seeds. Garbanzo beans or chickpeas, 1 cup, 8.6 and 15.4. Lima beans, 8, almost 9, and 24. Cup of soybeans. Now, this is not fair. We don't eat our soybeans dry. You ladies know that when you make things out of soybeans, you soak them overnight, and it's about a 3-to-1. So this is not really fair, but let's go with it. 12 and 18. Kidney beans, a cup of kidney beans, 12 and 22. Corn grits. Hey, grits can be good food as long as you get whole, ground up corn. Not a bad food. So the South has something to teach us here. Corn grits, 15.4 and 2.5. Carob flour. Now, few of us eat a whole cup of carob powder. Now, you may be able to eat that in brownies or something, but that's not on this lecture. So we're going to go with what they've got. But look at it. Soluble fiber is 30, insoluble is 10. Other insoluble, wheat bran takes the top, coconut, pistachio nuts, black-eyed peas, almonds, lentils, and corn bran. Very few of us eat a cup of corn bran, but look at the number on that. You don't need to add bran to your diet if you're eating a good diet. We have gotten in America where we add a lot of bran. The benefits, just as review, reduces cholesterol and triglycerides, reduces blood pressure, promotes discontinuation of insulin therapy for non-insulin dependent diabetics. This would be like a type 2. Reduces risk of death from heart disease, improves gastrointestinal function, reduces body weight in the obese, reduces risk of kidney damage, reduces insulin requirements, improves glycemic or blood sugar control. Well, how about Bill? Bill was a man who went through a program that was put out back in the 70s by a man in Louisville, Kentucky. He was an endocrinologist, and he bought into the same theory that I bought into, that carbohydrates were not bad. That wasn't talking about donuts. We're talking about fruits, vegetables, whole grains, that type of thing. And so, this is Bill's record. He went to the endocrinologist. He went in. His weight was 198 pounds. His blood sugar level was 288. There's no doubt that he was diabetic. That didn't even take any further testing. His cholesterol level was almost the same, 278. His triglycerides were 645. Remember we said we'd like less than 100? And he exercised. This man walked 5 miles a week. He would be your healthy neighbor. A little bit overweight, but Bill walks every day. He's got to be healthy. Bill wasn't healthy. Bill was sitting on a heart attack. Bill was a diabetic, and there's no way Bill was healthy. But he decided that he wasn't healthy, and so he went on the plan, and the plan is called the High Complex Carbohydrate High Fiber Program. HC and High Fiber, HF program they called this. In 5 weeks on the plan, his weight came down approximately 19 pounds. That's a good weight loss. Look at his blood sugar level. I hope that encourages some of you if your blood sugar level is over 200. Cholesterol dropped about 140 points. By the way, there is no drug that can compete with this chart. Lipitor doesn't even stand a chance, even if it doesn't give you muscle cramps and mess up your heart. Triglycerides, 103. But look what he did. He's putting in a lot of time. He's out there walking. He's burning that fuel. The most valuable thing about exercise for the diabetic is not the weight loss, it's the glucose you burn. You want to burn the fuel. If you burn more fuel, you have less storage. After 1 year, he's at 158 pounds. They claim his ideal is 165. His glucose level was 87. He is no longer a diabetic. His cholesterol is 133. His triglycerides are below 100. And he's still keeping up his 40 miles a week. I wish I had a picture. I don't. Bill is not unusual. Bill is what we expect out of the program. A slide representing blood sugar level on a low and a high fiber diet. I propose to you that for this chart to be fair, both people were consuming the same amount of carbohydrate. Otherwise, this chart wouldn't be fair at all. One carbohydrate was combined with high fiber. One carbohydrate was combined with the rest of the sugar in your Dunkin' Donut. Same amount of carbohydrate, that's the point. So we start here. Blood sugar levels, unfortunately, are high. Here's 100, here's 200. So both of the people we're talking about here are definitely diabetic. The ones that were on a high fiber diet, their sugar went up after breakfast, went up again after lunch, and went up again after supper, and came back down. Talk about regulating their blood sugar levels with the same amount of carbohydrate. I would much rather be this diabetic here. Look what happened to the diabetic that was eating a low fiber diet. The blood sugars went higher, getting over 300, and it was progressive. The insulin that they had stored up overnight was helping a little bit in the morning. But by the time they hit noon, the peak after their noon meal was about 320, and the peak after their evening meal was hitting close to 400. The same amount of carbohydrate minus the fiber. Fiber is the key. Fiber is automatically in good diet. Dr. Kempner, we're close to home now, this is at Duke. This is a German doctor who came over after World War II and actually put Duke on the map. This man invented or did what he called was the Duke diet, and it still goes on in a little bit different form at Duke University right now. But they were dealing with a condition that was not the condition they weren't treating diabetes, they were treating high blood pressure. And they called it malignant hypertension. And that was before the days of the big, powerful guns that we've got now down to bring down your blood pressure. And so he had people coming in there that had nephropathies. The blood pressure had ruined their kidneys. They had retinopathies. They had bleeding in the eyes. People were going blind. And when I tell you the diet he put them on, you think I'd have to be going blind to be willing to put up with the diet. But Dr. Kempner had two basic foods he put people on. Yeah, you're ready for this. And don't ask me why. I really wish he used white rice, and I don't recommend it. I recommend at least some whole grains and fruit and no sodium, no salt. That was breakfast. And if you didn't like that, then for lunch, you got to have fruit and rice. And then when you got tired of that in the evening, then you had rice and fruit again. So you see, the variety was definitely there. It's just hard to see. And after months and months on this program, people left there with their vision. People left there with kidney function. People left there with their blood pressure under control. And they also left there not being diabetic. So the diabetics he was treating as part of his hypertensive group did so well. Now you can see why they apply it to being diabetic now. The goal of this program was to treat blood pressure, and the side benefit was curing these people that had high blood sugar. So let's take a look at the results. In a 4-week program, the ones that started the program, we had insulin consuming. We had 38% in that group that stopped all their insulin. We had 62% that decreased their insulin. When it came to oral medication in our test group, 80% stopped their oral medication. Not bad for a month's worth of work, especially you had 40 years getting yourself there. Decreased 15%, and only 5% of that group with the oral medication stayed the same. Absolutely incredible, phenomenal results from eating nothing but rice and fruit. And if your husband wants to take you out, and you say, oh, all I can eat is fruit and rice, he's going to say, wow, that's incredible. You're a cheap date. No, I don't know where he's going to go to a restaurant like that anyway. I don't recommend eating nothing but rice and fruit, because I have seen more advantages and more variety, and I think a better program eating nothing but vegetables. Because fruit in itself has a much higher affinity for raising your blood sugar, even if you eat the whole apple, than my cabbage, my cauliflower, my broccoli, my Brussels sprouts, my asparagus, my potatoes, my carrots, my sweet potato. You go through the whole list. And after you get done trying out all 5,000 vegetables, then you can start again. You go, oh, you're on a very limited diet, you know. People would tell me that. I'm going, wait a minute. No, you got it wrong here. A vegetarian eats 2 to 3 times the variety of diet that a meat eater. The meat eaters are the ones that are stuck in the mud. They think if they don't have eggs and bacon for breakfast that they haven't eaten. Well, they've done that the last 35 years. Well, that's 2 different foods if I calculate correctly. Well, go to a vegetarian's house. You know what I had this morning? I had potatoes and onions with it, and I had tofu. Seems pretty boring. Well, my wife cooked real good, and she went off to see the grandkids, so I get the benefit of eating her cooking. I've got more charts than what we need to take time with as far as your fiber. If you want to get a good fiber chart, I'd recommend you Google it. But let's just go through a few. A half a cup of asparagus. Here's your soluble, and here's your insoluble. And you start going through the whole list. Brussels sprouts, 2 and 1.8. Remember, after you've eaten for a whole day, you're trying to get 60 in for a whole day. By then, you probably won't have to worry about your diverticulitis. By then, your hiatus hernia may not bother you so bad. And by then, you'll be down a few pounds, and you go on. Raw vegetables, cabbage, carrots, celery, cucumbers, iceberg lettuce. Yes, iceberg lettuce. People say it doesn't have anything in it. Well, I will agree with you. It doesn't have much calories, but it still has micronutrients or minerals in there. Let's see what we got. We've got some fruits here. Let's pick out a high one. Where's the high one here? Apples with the skin, soluble and insoluble. Apricots, 4 apricots. We're doing pretty good. Figs, we already talked about that one. Mango, it's got to be good, you know. It just has to be. Soluble and insoluble. Watermelon, 0.4 and 0.2. Hey, that's not a... Please enjoy your watermelon, okay? You're just not going to get a lot of fiber with it. Beans, we got black beans, 2.4 and 3. Black-eyed peas, chickpeas, kidney beans, etc., etc. Whole wheat spaghetti, at least has a little bit. Wheat bran, this is cheating here because obviously you've thrown the wheat away. Let's keep on going. Okay, let's spend our time talking about this. A vitally important concept for maintaining more stable blood sugar levels. Number 1, foods that slow the intestinal absorption. Remember that chart I showed you back in the beginning of the lecture, where the conclusion that you feed diabetics more fat and more protein because it caused less of an insulin response? That is still true. There's just a better way to treat people. So a buffer food is a food that slows down how fast the glucose, blood sugar, gets from your intestinal tract into your bloodstream. So let's find a few. Number 1, fats in any form slow your digestion. So if you want food in your stomach longer, then you eat everything fried. But please don't do that, okay? But that takes them. You process about 10 grams of fat per hour in your stomach. So on my way to work, I passed the truck stop. And at the truck stop, they used to have this sign out front. It said, Manager's Special. 1 pound steak, fries, and whatever, apple pie, whatever. You know, this is the Manager's Special. I got a weird sense of humor. I'm going through, okay, that truck driver's out there driving down the road. He's got a steak. He's got his French fries. I don't know what he had for dessert, whatever was happening. But a steak is 16 ounces of meat. Each ounce has about 10 grams of fat. So he's got 16 hours in his stomach on that one. And then depending on how many French fries he had, he's got another 20, you know, like 4 or 5 hours. So now I'm up to 21 hours in his stomach. And then I started looking at truck drivers and I understand why they have all this in their stomach. And so you must realize that that man, 24 hours later, could have not totally processed one meal. And he's driving down the road, he's driving down the road, and I don't want him to go to sleep. Because every truck driver that has an accident, that's a deadly accident, 1 truck driver dies and 4 other people die. It's a 1-to-4 ratio. You don't win with trucks. Not that I want anybody to wreck. So to get my attention, well, back to fat again. Are there some fats that you and I can eat that are naturally in our foods that aren't going to decrease our insulin sensitivity? And the answer is yes. And if your waistline can handle it, then olives, avocados, some fresh nuts would be totally appropriate. If you're trying to lose weight quickly, that would not be the best way to go. So let's look at number 2, protein. Protein is a buffer food. But that doesn't mean you need to eat fish. That's 90% protein to get this effect. And our third thing we spent time with, complex carbohydrates, which are high fiber foods. The fiber doesn't allow the glucose to go in quick. So let me ask you a question. Can you name one food that qualifies for everything here? Pop quiz.
Cabbage.
What's that? Cabbage. Technically, you're correct, but we can get a little bit better picture. Beans are qualify for everything. Cabbage does too, by the way. Technically, you're all correct no matter what food you chose in the natural area. But let's go with the soybean. Soybean has 33% fat, 33% carbohydrate, and 33 or 34, however you want to split up the last percent of protein. The soybean is an absolutely incredible food. It's divided 1/3 each for every component I'm telling you about. So one food can actually take care of you. So back to Bill. Dr. Anderson's work in Louisville, Kentucky, one of his mainstays for treating diabetics was what? Beans, beans. I'll let you finish the song, okay? But the point is that beans are a food that allow you to have good nourishment, good nutrition, good satiety. You can feel full after you eat them and qualify for everything I'm telling you here. So I'm hoping that if you're diabetic, that you and beans get along just fine. If not, this isn't your only result. You can choose other foods to do and accomplish the same task. Check your handouts. Did you get this handout? Okay, you've got a one. I'll go through this, but what you did get was a one day food plan. It will give you the same concepts, except we're going to cover this. The reason I did this is so you could get some feel. And by the way, it's not a crime to eat breakfast for lunch and lunch for breakfast, and so you eat where you want to. If you want broccoli for breakfast, that's awesome. Don't get hung up that I have to have my bacon and eggs, or I have to always eat dry cereal. Suit yourself and your own logic. So breakfast here, I went with a pretty classic. 1 cup of oat bran cooked or dry cereal, 1 cup of soy or almond milk. If you want to save a few calories, you'll get almond or rice milk. And now Silk does a great job. They tell you right on the front of the container. Almond milk, 30. Soy, 100. Berry vanilla soy, Silk, 130. So you can go from 30 to 130. By the way, I'd rather you pick on the lower end of that scale. Whole wheat bread with peanut butter. Once again, the whole wheat bread with peanut butter qualifies for an excellent buffer food, and it sticks with you. And a fruit, your choice. For lunch, a cup of beans, 2 cups of steamed vegetables, your choice, a half a cup of brown rice or quinoa or other grain you prefer, and a cup of vegetable salad. I shouldn't have to limit. I should put unlimited. And then for your evening, if you choose a third meal, a cup of soup, 2 cups of garden salad, half a cup of beans in your salad, peas, garbanzos, whatever you want, whole wheat crackers, etc. This is just a sample. This is not poured in concrete. You may hate everything on that list and find something a whole lot better. For me, I really enjoy asparagus. The funny thing about asparagus is pound for pound, asparagus has more protein than a steak. That really amazed me because I'm trying to teach people to be on a low protein diet, and here I'm eating this asparagus. But remember, how much asparagus would you have to eat to have the same amount of calories that's in this steak? A bushel? So you see, I get to cheat a little bit, okay? The fiber does take over, and you can only hold so much, but it's an excellent choice. So, I have 4:41 on the new clock. No, I'm sorry. It is a beautiful clock. It really is. I can see it even with my glasses on, so we're good. We're going to go ahead and open up for questions. I have another opportunity to come back next month. I made it through half of the lecture, so if you, maybe we'll be able to cover the rest of the story, but we did cover the essential parts. And I hope that you have looked at other people's examples, whether it's Bill or somebody else, and said, you know what? I'm going to put my name on that chart next year. And that's really the goal. I just wanted you to know that it is possible. Because if you believe it's not possible, there's nothing that's going to change that. You have to at least start believing, I can do this, or I think I can make it, or it is possible. You know, it's like those ads in the paper. Lose 14 pounds in 14 days. The first time you see it, you go. Next time you see it, you go, they're bothering me. The third time you see it, you say, that's okay. By the time you see it 10 times, what's happening to your brain? And then they start showing people's pictures along the side of the ad. And you go, I can't believe it. What if that was me? And this thing that you would never believe in the beginning of 14 pounds in 14 days, you're starting to actually consider it. Well, I don't know how many times I need to come here, but I'm hoping you start to at least consider it. That your picture or your name can be Rosemary instead of Bill or something. Anyway. We've got a microphone. Any questions if I haven't thoroughly worn you out or warned myself?
You know all those fake soy products?
Yes.
They're not good for you, are they? Those fake
Let
hamburgers?
me just say a few words because they're not all created equal. Secondly, they are really soy foods. Some people say they're fake meat, or they call them meat substitutes. I would like to think as meat is the substitute for real food, but that's beside the point. But the soy foods have inherent problems. Number one, they usually are overspiced. They usually are over salt. And they usually are fairly high in fat, because when you process the soybean, even to make tofu, you throw away the carbohydrate portion, you keep the fat and the protein. So tofu goes from a soybean at 33% protein, and it jumps, it's 33% fat, and it jumps in tofu to 51% fat in tofu. So tofu is still a refined food, technically. To answer your question a little more directly, first of all, you don't need them, number one. Number two, a lot of people are changing from a meat-based diet to a vegan or vegetarian diet, and they go to the store and they just try to say, well, I'm going to get a garden burger, not a hamburger. And I'm going to get these striplets instead of my bacon. And I'm going to get this smart, why don't I call them smart? I don't know, but they're going to get smart dogs and this and that and that. But when you start reading the ingredients, you go, I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing. Because there's two ingredients I want you to watch out for. And that is soy protein isolate and soy protein concentrate. Either of those components, when you process the soy to that point, the IGF, insulin-like growth factor response in the body is actually worse for you than for dairy. So I'd highly recommend that you enjoy your garbanzos, and if you want to make a good chili, you don't need to put hamburger or even veggie burger in it. Just enjoy it, make your sauce good, and enjoy it. And by the way, when you see the price tag on those foods, you go, I think I can afford the beans. Any legume is going to be excellent. I picked on soy because it's one of the most unique ones, because for some reason when God made it, he made a third protein, a third carb, and a third fat. And it's an incredible product. Yeah. Joy's got a...
Don't we need to soak all of our beans to get rid of the inhibitors?
Now what now?
Soak the beans and soybeans to get rid of the inhibitors?
Okay, how many of you ladies have an Instapot? Okay, that speeds the process significantly. But soybeans need to be soaked because you're talking about dry soybeans now. And to hydrate them and bring them back so they can be cooked, the Instapot will help. Soaking will help overnight. By the way, I'm not the chef in the family. I just get to do the eating. And so I observe this, okay? So yes, it would be much better to soak your beans overnight and allow them.
But I mean to get rid of the inhibitors.
The inhibitors actually in beans are inhibited. They're there for a reason. Okay? The reason you're going to have various chemicals in the bean is, we used to think it was a negative, like the phytic acid, or like some of the things. Well, that binds with the calcium and we shouldn't eat this. I'm going, well, wait a minute. I didn't make this food. God did. So a lot of things that we consider negative is because we have faulty logic. If you want to try to soak the beans and get rid of gas, I have never eaten a bean that's gasless, okay? And I've had ladies, and I've been in church all my life, that have told me that the way I cook my beans, it won't give you gas. Well, I happen to prove every one of them wrong, okay? Now, soaking and doing certain things and removing odd chain carbohydrates can change the bowel function, that your bacteria in your bowel don't have a party and pass gas, okay? So there is some help. But in general, as a general rule, if you eat gas, if you eat beans, you must plan on long walks. It's just that simple. And by the way, flatulence is not a disease. Not always socially acceptable, but it's not a disease, folks. And it doesn't mean that you have an unhealthy colon if you pass gas. I'm sorry. I mean, we've made a whole social thing out of this. But it's not that much of a problem. It just means we need to spend more time outside, probably, which would probably be better for all of us. And if we walk, it may even help you better, okay? Anyway, I've gone too far on that topic. But the point is that if you want to get beans more digestible, you'll get fresh peas. You'll get the edamames, the soybean, before it's all dried out and little and round. They'll almost look like baby limas. You'll get your lima beans. That way you don't have to go through this whole process. But in the middle of winter, you're storing up your food, you will best to soak your beans and then go from there. Yes, ma'am.
A lot of the talk was about a person who is diabetic, that they need to lose weight. If a person has never been overweight, but they are diabetic, is it basically just because of what they take or intake, or why?
I'm not sure I'm following your question. Are you overweight because you're a diabetic, or are you diabetic because you're overweight?
My grandfather was diabetic, and he was not overweight.
Do you remember what type of diabetic what he was?
Probably a 2.
If he was a type 2 diabetic, he would be extremely rare, because that would mean that he was getting insulin resistant from somewhere else. I don't know what happened to his pancreas. I don't know what toxins or what kind of field he worked in. There could have been some other reason for him to lose his pancreas, but did he take shots?
No.
Then he was probably, you're correct, he probably was type 2 or didn't care, one or the other. But the point is, he was probably less than 1%, because you have to get insulin resistance. Thin people don't have insulin resistance. Well, here's an exception, okay? If you're an astronaut and you can limit your activity that much, and if you eat a high-fat diet, we can take, this has been done, they experimented on healthy young men, and they fed them like 100 grams of fat a day, an enormous high-fat diet, and wouldn't allow them to exercise. And they did force them into being insulin resistant, even when they weren't diabetic, and you can see that response. But that's not classic to find out in the real world, where people walk around and go to work and do whatever. So, any other questions or observations or comments? Or
Is stevia bad for you?
is stevia bad for you? At this point, I'm going to say no. But I'm also going to preface this a little bit. I wish I had as much biochemistry on the chemical formula and everything of stevia as I do on Splenda, and I don't. But here's what I do know about stevia. Stevia is not a sweetening. It is a natural product in a plant that has the same effect on my tongue as these artificial sweeteners we're talking about. So you notice a little bit of hesitation when I said it's okay, because I still have a question mark saying it still acts like a duck, it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. I'm going, I really wish I could tell you to eat all the stevia you want, because it is a chemical that has the same response on my tongue. If it has the same response on my tongue, then it's still going to drop my insulin. I mean, it's going to increase my insulin level, drop my blood sugar, and have the same negative stuff that I'm trying to get rid of with the artificial sweeteners. But here's the other thing. It may not have the neurological problems. It may not have the muscle problems that the stevia or the NutraSweet may have. I wish I had more research to tell you. Stevia is a plant. I don't think I'm going to get $10 million research spent on it. You know. But if I had to choose, and I don't think you do, between artificial sweeteners and stevia, I would definitely choose the stevia.
How about monk fruit?
How about what?
Monk fruit?
I'm going to say, just off the cuff, it's way overrated, because we're always looking for this food that I can eat to cure my diabetes and help my blood sugar levels, and it probably isn't any better than eating broccoli. There's no...
No, I'm talking about the monk fruit sweetener.
Oh, sweetener. I'm sorry, I missed the point.
Yeah, that's okay.
I would have to see the chemistry of it. I don't know if it's an actual sweetener, like agave nectar or something like that. I don't know I'd have to see the chemistry of it. Is it actually a glucose molecule, or is it some other molecule? And
All I know is it tastes better than the rest of them.
M-U-N-G, mung? K in there? I'll go check it out. I should find the chemistry
Yeah,
on it.
it's got an interesting
Bakla-
flavor.
Agave. Okay, folks, let's go back, okay? Whether I'm visiting the bees, whether I'm going to my sugar maple tree, whether I'm extracting it from a cactus, or whether I'm drinking orange juice, I'm all concentrating a carbohydrate, and it has all potential problems. There's no shortcuts here. So for my diabetics, I don't give honey. I may have them smear honey on their wound on their leg, and you go, wait, won't that mess them up? I go, no, because bacteria can't live in that. That's the old school. But when it comes to refining carbohydrate, there is no way to get around it. It's just a matter of how refined. You can say, well, honey has got benefits. You're correct. Over what? Over white sugar. So does your maple syrup. So does agave nectar. Folks, the concept is you don't just throw out your 5 pounds of sugar and get 5 pounds of honey and lay it to everything. You're not getting ahead here. You know, if you had to fly 2,500 miles, well, you're not a bee. If you had to walk 2,500 miles for every tablespoonful of honey you ate, I wouldn't have to worry about you, okay? And by the way, I like honey.
There's a couple of the fast food places like Burger King and Hardee's that are now offering Burger Kings made out of plant foods. And I looked at the ingredients on one of them. It said it makes it out of peas, and I suppose it's chickpeas, but I don't know. What do you know about that?
Actually, what's happening, we're seeing a whole shift enough in the population that they are actually concerned about getting your and my business, and they will come up with a vegan-based burger, whether it's made from a pea protein all the way through to what they call Beyond Meat. So they are going to do that because the population is large enough, and I don't know how large. Maybe 10% of the people will actually buy that. My son-in-law went and tried a Beyond Burger, and he paid twice as much as a regular hamburger and wasn't overly impressed. So that ended his career with Beyond Burger. So I don't know how good it's all going to turn out in the long run. But what I'm thankful for is the Beyond Burger type thing is trying to get people who are meat eaters and not trying to make them into vegetarians. They're trying to look for a meat alternative truly for them. They're not trying to make... Now, the garden burgers, the pea base or whatever kind of burger, that's trying to appeal to the person who's already a vegan and wants to be able to get something besides a bean burrito for lunch or a Subway sandwich. So everybody's looking for their piece of the market. So money does drive things. As far as health-wise, read the ingredients is the best thing. See what qualifies for and see what you want to put in it. I've eaten some garden burgers I thought were pretty decent. I'm really blessed. My wife beats them all, so I have no reason to go out to eat except to make it easier for her, and so I probably need to wash the dishes more. Got 4 minutes, folks. By the way, there is literature on the table coming in. There was actually a booklet on diabetes if you want to pick that up on the way out. Thank each of you for coming. And when is our next meeting? It's next month.
It's right on that yellow sheet that I gave them.
Thank you. March 22, Sunday from 2 to 5, same time, same place. And we're covering cancer prevention in that session. Thank you. Good to see you.